Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Trisha with Insectopia, and normally we are here drawing and looking at an insect underneath my microscope every Thursday night, but tonight I am in a different location and therefore don't have my microscope with me and or specimens. So instead of looking at a buggy this week and doing an individual drawing, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to talk insect intercourse. Hi, Susan. So happy to have you here, and you are 100% correct. I think that your mod powers are going to be used this week because, you know, YouTube might have decided that some of these words aren't really good for commenting, but you'll notice I made this PowerPoint a couple of years ago. I've been teaching it and going over it. I think I taught this class 25 or 26 times last year. But the variety of insects that I discussed has increased since the last time that I updated this PowerPoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the PowerPoint and show you all kinds of fun pictures. And then depending on how much time we have and what we want to do, I can expand it and we can talk about other insects and that I don't have pictures of. But I did bring my electronic drawing stuff, so we can kind of do a little bit of doodling. It should be a fun time. So looking forward to that. A lot of times when I'm discussing insect intercourse or when I'm giving a class where we're going to be talking about a variety of different insects, I like to start with insects that everybody is aware of and then move towards insects that are maybe a little bit weirder. Although, because you're all bug people here, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to know of all of the insects we're talking about today, at least. All right. So where I want to start are honeybees. Now, as you know, honeybees, the queens, are the ones that are going to be going out on their mating flights, and worker bees, even though they are female, do not have reproductive organs, cannot lay eggs, but what they can do is sting, because their ovipositor, that egg-laying device, on workers have been modified into a stinger. The queen, she is going to have all of those active reproductive organs that all of what she needs. Now, the drones, those are going to be the males. They are going to connect to the queen bee while she is in mid-flight, right? So honeybees go out on mating flights, where that honeybee, that queen, is going to go out and she's going to fly around, she's going to leave her colony, and she's going to go out looking for boys, right? She's going to go looking for drones. Now, the male reproductive organ of insects is generally called the Aediagus. All right, that is a honeybee Aediagus. I'm going to tell my computer to ignore that. My computer wants honeybee to be one word, and we know that a honeybee, because it's a true bee, is 2 words. So someone needs to fix that on the on the word dictionary. Now, the male honeybee's Aediagus looks a little bit like this. When the male joins up to the female mid-flight, the Aediagus enters the female and quite literally explodes into her body. All right, in such a way that the male does not survive the mating process. All right, just like a worker honeybee, she's only going to be able to sting once because her barb on her, the barbs on her stinger are in such a way that her stinger rips out the venom sac, right? In the male's Aediagus, the organ explodes into the queen and then he falls to the ground and dies. There are some people out there that refer to this as Honey Nut and Cheerio. You know, good jokes. This honeybee the honeybee queen, you might think that she's just going to go out and mate and like with 1 or 2 males. But a queen honeybee who's like on the best flight of her life, you know, they can mate with up to 30 males. And then the queen honeybee is going to have enough genetics and enough of those sperm packets that she's going to be able to lay her eggs for the rest of her life. And she can store those packets for an incredibly long time. All right. All right. Susan says, interesting that honeybees can't lay eggs. I remember reading that worker bumblebees can lay eggs, but only haploid ones because they can't mate. Ooh. Yeah. So I've not read up too much on bumblebees, but I guess that would make sense. And I wonder... No, honeybees. So, in honeybees, the queens get fed that royal jelly, and the royal jelly is what helps their reproductive organs develop. Whereas, yeah, so the royal jelly helps the reproductive organs develop, and so worker females don't have like reproductive organs that are functional. No, I believe you. I was wondering about that when you said it, and so I'll have to look into that. That's really cool. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, so those are honeybees, and that's the story that I like to start off with because honeybees are one of those insects that pretty much everyone is aware of. We've all seen them, interacted with them, even though they're not a native species. So those are honeybees. Let me know if you have any additional questions about them, and we can move on to the next insect that I have planned. So let's see. We've got honeybees. Boop, boop, boop. All right. Praying mantids. All right. So a lot of us already know a little bit about praying mantids. Praying mantids, number 1, they are well known for the females eating the males. Now, there is some research out there saying that females are actually more likely to eat the males in captivity than they are in the wild, and that's likely because of stress or how hungry she is. But there is an actual biological reason that the females are going to eat the males, because it still does happen in the wild also. All right, Susan says, can you or will you talk about sex determination in different insects? I also got from Dave Goulson that bumblebees have many different versions of the sex determining gene. So, sex determination in insects gets really, really complicated really, really quickly. For instance, oh, you've got a second message here. Bees that only get one version of the gene become males, and bumblebees that get 2 different versions become female. So that is something that happens in honeybees also. So the way that shows in honeybees, Susan, is that we'll jump back over here. The way that happens in honeybees is a queen, before she is mated, will only lay drones, because those are the males, and they get one kind of version of that gene. Whereas when a queen bee who has mated with who's mated and has both pieces, now she's able to lay females. So that's actually really helpful in their populations, because if you are a fresh and brand new queen and you're going to be going out on mating flights, it's beneficial for you to have more drones flying around. So if she's laying some eggs and then she lays out some drones, then it's possible that there's going to be mating there too. that's how it works. So if she lays an unfertilized egg, it becomes a male, and if she lays a fertilized egg, it's most certainly a female. Yeah, every now and again, they will lay males. Now, there is something really cool this isn't a wasp, in some of the little parasitoid wasps, like egg parasitoids, and some like gall wasps, I don't know how we know this though. We do know that there are wasps that can kind of choose whether their egg that they are laying is going to be a male or is going to be a female. But I'm not sure exactly how we ran those experiments to discover that. So if you had a really tight population bottleneck, you might end up with a high prevalence of just one version of that gene, and even the fertilized eggs would turn out male because they get 2 identical copies of the same sex gene. Yeah! Susan, you've got this. That's exactly right. And so sex determination in insects can just be based on that, where pre-mating they're male and post-mating they're female. Sex determination in some wasps, the adult female who is laying the egg can determine whether or not it's going to be a male or a female. So they'll keep something like the same percentage of males to like a male to female ratio based off of how they're laying their eggs, which is interesting. And then I wonder if, I know that there are some insects that can change their sex if there's not enough of one in the population, but they can only do that as an immature. So if they're a nymph and they're coming up through the life cycle, and there are like not enough males, they will become a male, or if there's not enough females, they'll become a female. And I feel like some species of termites do that, but I wouldn't quote me on that one. Huh. I'm gonna have to read that Dave Goulston book, Susan. That sounds like a really fun and fabulous read. Awesome. So those are honeybees mating and the ADAs, all the fun stuff. So let's discuss praying mantids. Now, we know that the female is generally going to eat the male, and most people, when they hear about this, they just go, oh, it makes sense because the female is eating the male for maybe the nutrients for her babies. Maybe she was really hungry and didn't get enough food in other ways, so she's turning around and eating the male for her babies. Now, that is partially correct, but that is not the entire truth. All right, so to learn a little bit about praying mantis mating, we have to look into population dynamics. So for the male praying mantid's best chance at passing his genetics on to the next generation, or for his best chance of his young surviving through, he would rather take his entire sperm packet and then divide it and then mate with multiple females. That's his ideal goal, right? He wants to go out and mate with as many females as possible, kind of separate what he has between a whole bunch of ladies, because he doesn't want to lay all of his eggs in one basket. But the female's not cool with that, because the more of that packet she receives, the more genetics she has to lay more eggs. And for her best chance of her young surviving through the next generation, she wants to have a whole lot of babies. All right. So when she's, she wants to have lots and lots of babies. So her best chance is to receive the entire sperm packet. That's what she wants. She wants the guy to stick around. The female praying mantis, if she does turn around during the mating process and bite the male, kind of on, we call it the cervix, but it's like in between the head and the pronotum. There's that soft spot in there. It's almost like a neck. And that spot in there, there's a cluster of nerve cells in between the head and the pronotum. And if she bites that cluster of nerve cells in just the right spot, in just the right way, yes, she kills the male. But his biological processes continue to finish. All right, so she forces him to give her the entire packet, and then because after mating he's already dead, she might as well turn around and eat him. And that way she receives the entire packet. She has lots and lots of genetics for her babies, and she can lay more eggs than anyone else. And that is why that behavior is becoming more and more popular in praying mantids, is because the females that do it lay more eggs, and that is more successful in this population. All right. Do immature insects even properly have a sex? I mean, can we see any differences in morphology? Yes. The example that I can think of right off of the bat are cockroaches. Cockroaches, whether or not they are full-grown adults or itty-bitty little nymphs, you can tell the difference in males and females by the last segments of their abdomen. So in that way, they are determined in the immature stage. What's a little light necrophilia between mantids? Yeah, exactly, right? See, he can finish. It's a great time. I love that. All right. So yes, there is differences in morphology in immature insects. I would say more regularly there is a difference in morphology in insects with simple metamorphosis rather than complete metamorphosis. So I can't think of like a caterpillar that's different between males or females, or like a beetle grub that you can tell the male versus the female. But you can tell grasshoppers, you can tell cockroaches, you can tell praying mantids. And that's interesting because termites are a simple metamorphosis, and I believe that they can change. Cockroaches have the type of metamorphosis where the juveniles are basically the same as the adults minus the wings. What's the proper term? The proper term is simple metamorphosis, or you can use hemimetabolous. This word right here, hemimetabolous. Hemimetabolous are insects that have a simple metamorphosis, meaning they do not go through a chrysalis or a cocoon or any type of pupa. They just hatch from the egg as a nymph and then eat, shed, grow until they become adult. That's hemimetabolous. When we're talking about an insect that has a pupa, like a butterfly or a beetle or a fly, those are holometabolists. So those are going to be your two differences. Hemi and holometabolists are words that are like university level words, but you can also discuss it simple metamorphosis and complete metamorphosis. Simply grows up, completely changes. That's how we remember it. Need to get some caterpillars under the microscope next summer. Yeah, you always have so many caterpillars that you're raising. You should really check that out and see if you can see some differences or raise them through. That would be so much fun, Susan. You should send me pictures. Susan says insects with complete metamorphosis are basically just bags of flesh made for eating when they're young. And that is so incredibly true. Caterpillars and beetle grubs and maggots, they are all just a life stage for consuming as much food as physically possible so that they can, so that their adults have the best chance of survival. Plus, a lot of those adults aren't taking in really heavy amounts of protein or heavy amounts of nutrient-rich foods, right? Like if you think of a butterfly, they're going around and drinking nectar, and that's great. It's essentially sugar water, you know. But they're caterpillars when they're eating all of those leaves. That's pretty nutrient heavy. Ooh, yeah. My microscope is an AmScope microscope. This way. My microscope that I use is an AmScope microscope, and I would highly recommend it. This is a microscope that it's technically an off-brand microscope, but AmScope makes really fabulous cameras, and microscopes are all about the lenses and those types of things, so it's a really great camera, and they're inexpensive because they're off-brand. Oh, right. So those are praying mantids, and why praying mantids? The females are going to eat the males. The next insect that I want to talk about is actually what I think I consider my favorite insect nowadays, and that is dragonflies. Now, why are dragonflies my favorite insect? Well, number one, when dragonflies are immatures, we call them naiads, and a naiad is essentially an underwater nymph. Right? We just got to talk about nymphs versus larvae, or simple versus complete metamorphosis. Dragonflies have a simple metamorphosis, but because the immatures live underwater and the adults are above water, we call them naiads instead. Now, I'm going to tell you why they're my favorite, and then we're going to talk about the mating process. Because the naiads here, when they are underwater, they've got these like cute little bottom jaws that they use, and they look a little bit like face masks, but they've got this hinge, and they have the ability to throw out their bottom jaw, reach out, grab onto their food, and pull their food back to their face. And so they have this motion that they use to catch prey. Some dragonfly naiads are going to be underwater for 1 or 2 years before they've collected enough food to become an adult. And when they're underwater if they're underwater for over a year, they're going to be a fairly large dragonfly when they're an adult. And at those late instars where they're a pretty big naiad, they can eat small fish and tadpoles. So they're pretty aggressive predators. They also have something that we call rectal gills, meaning that the naiads actually pull water up into their abdomen, and then that's how they breathe. They have the ability to pull oxygen out of the water while it's inside of their body. And then when they get scared, they have the ability to spray water out of their abdomen so quickly and with so much force that they use it like a little jet propulsion, spraying water out of their abdomen in underwater. It's fabulous. So those are the immatures and kind of why I love dragonflies. But we are here to talk about the mating process of these dragonflies here. Now, welcome. I have some new friends here. So, yes, Susan, I would love to another night do an equipment breakdown. We can talk about microscopes and nets and tools and places that I purchase things from now that BioEquip doesn't exist anymore. So we can definitely do that one of these days. Welcome, Bags and Deb. That's all right, Bags. All right. Yeah, so that's that. Dragonfly naiads, when they crawl out of the water, then they emerge as an adult dragonfly. Their wings are going to expand, and their wings do go kind of out behind their back, but then they're going to open wide like this, and dragonflies have some of the oldest wing types out there in the insect world. A true dragonfly here does not have the ability to fold its wings up over its back. The dragonfly has to keep its wings out, kind of like this. All right. Now, we're here to talk insect intercourse. Male dragonflies have 2 reproductive regions, not Not just one. You see, the male dragonflies at the very, very end of their abdomen, they're going to have essentially their, at the tip of their abdomen, they have where they're creating their sperm packet. They also have little claspers, and they have, a lot of them have a little knife-like scoop. Not all of them, but a lot of them. When a male dragonfly is getting ready to go and find a female, he's not just going to be like, I'm an adult and I'm ready. No. See, the males, they're going to create a sperm packet before they even find a lady, and he does what they call a sperm transfer, where he takes his abdomen and he curls it up over itself, and he puts his sperm packet into a little secondary pocket here. So essentially, we call it an accessory genitalia. So let me. So he uses this. I think accessory has 2 C's. So he uses this accessory genitalia. Is that not the right way? Yeah, it is. Okay. He uses this accessory genitalia. Essentially, he's like, I'm an adult male and I'm ready, and now my sperm is in my pocket. And then he goes out looking for ladies. So he's got this where he kind of flips it over and he preps himself, and he's like, yeah, now I'm going to go and find myself a lady. And see, now this lady, he's going to go over to her, and he's going to use this little knife-like scoop that is on the end of his abdomen, and he is going to scoop out any genetics or anything that a previous male has left, because he wants to ensure that the eggs that she is laying are going to be from his genetics. And this is what that looks like. All right, this is the Aedeagus of a Halloween pennant, and you can see right here at the very, very end of the abdomen, you've got this like little knife-like scoop. This isn't even transfer of sperm. This is just like, you don't have anything else in there right now, right? And he kind of scoops all of that out. And then they're going to transfer. So in this picture, the male is this one here. The male is this one on the front. This is the accessory pocket. That's where they are actually physically connected. And then he is going to use those claspers and hold on to the back of her neck. Now, that almost sounds aggressive, right? Like, oh my goodness, he's holding onto her neck. But it's because it's more defensive or protective than aggressive, right? He's not being aggressive about it. He's just saying, hey, you and I, we're going to fly to the water together. And so he's going to hold on to the back of her neck, and they are together going to fly to the nearest water body. That might be a pond or a lake or a river, whatever water body their immatures are going to be happy in. And then he and her, both of them, are going to very carefully kind of dip her abdomen into the water over and over, and she is actively laying her eggs while he is protecting her. Let me read some comments really quick. Because, all right, and the other thing is that not every single dragonfly is going to hold on to her neck like this. Some of them just kind of posture and watch over her. So they'll be like, all right, this is my territory. They'll kind of fly together, and then he'll kind of sit on a cattail or sit on a Phragmites and watch her and protect her that way. But there is always some kind of like protection that the males give to the females to ensure that their eggs are laid. Let's see where we're at. The eastern pond hawks were the most interesting. The male would grab the female, mate for a moment, then release her and guard the area. Exactly. Probably my favorite thing about insect courting that I've witnessed is in compost flies. Oh man, I need to know more about compost flies. It's like an IKEA assembly sheet. Yeah, exactly. There's all different types. Oh, that's so funny. Yes, y'all are having a good time in the chat, and I love it. Now, so we've got this happening. She's able to lay her eggs. That's a great time. Now, dragonflies are also very much territorial. So dragonflies are territorial in that they are going to be kind of guarding their own space and guarding their females. Now, if this male brings a female to a region that is not his and is already claimed by a different male, there are two very specific things about dragonflies that make this dangerous. One is that dragonflies are very, very fast. They have very, very fast flyers. There is a species of dragonfly in Australia that was clocked at 59 miles an hour. Not only are they fast, but they are incredibly accurate. If you talk about your average lion or tiger, they're going to have an accuracy rate of 30 to 35%. Essentially, about a third of the time a lion chases its prey, it catches it. Black-footed cats, 66%, about 2/3 of the time. Double a lion, that's awesome. But dragonflies laugh at them both because dragonflies have an accuracy rate of somewhere between 90 and 95%. I've heard people argue as high as 97. One of the most accurate predator out there. And because dragonflies are both fast and accurate, when a male takes a female into someone else's territory, that other male is going to dive bomb them. All right? And because he is so fast and so accurate, he's going to dive bomb the other male with such speed that their heads are going to clash, and then they both die. See, most animals, if they're headbutting each other, like, I don't know, bighorn sheep, they don't actually kill one another. They're evolved and adapted to do this. Dragonflies, not so much. Why does it still exist in this population? Why are males going around killing each other? Because the females survive. And the females are the ones laying the eggs. And by the time that this is happening, the females have already been mated. So, yeah, that's why this behavior still exists, is because the females, which is what populations are based on, is the female, a lot of times the females. Yeah, good times. So there's that. Now, I tell this story like all male dragonflies have this knife-like scoop here to help scoop out other genetics. Not every male dragonfly has this. Some male dragonflies, before they insert their own genetics into the female, they will actually insert a toxin into the female to kill off the genetics of any other male before putting theirs in. So instead of a scoop, some dragonflies actually just introduce a toxin to the environment. All right, I'm reading chit chats for a minute. Butterfly mating is fun because the lady is like, I don't care what you do, I need my food, and she'll just drag him around all the flowers. Yes, 100% Susan, and I actually have a butterfly planned that we're going to talk about that mates a little bit differently than that too. I remember in Dragonflies of the East, there's an introduction discussing life cycle. Wagner points out that some species we can barely separate, and only by close examination of the genitals. How do the dragonflies identify the right species to mate with? Oh, that's a fabulous question. Yeah, because us as humans, us as people, have a really, really hard time determining differences. I would say there's a pretty good chance that there is a pheromone connected to species identification in dragonflies, but I don't have a paper to point at to say that. But that's what I would say. It's probably just based off of It's probably based off of pheromones. Now, another thing is that Actually, in some things like fireflies. Fireflies, we can't tell that some fireflies are actually so similar that we can't tell the difference between them after they've passed. The only way that we can identify them, some of them past genus, is by recording their flash patterns, because everything else is the same, but their flash patterns are different. And because their flash patterns are different, they would never mate with one another and therefore are different species. So it's possible that where the dragonflies look similar might have a different behavior that stops them from mating, from interbreeding. That's amazing, Susan. Well, bed bugs do that, and we'll talk about that momentarily. They just mate with everything. Yeah, Susan goes, they can't figure each other out. The males just grab anything that's passing by. Females of the same species, males of the same species, males and females of other species. Sometimes insects are just out there trying to make babies, all right? That's what their adult stage is for anyway, right? So they're out there spreading their genetics the best that they can. And if they are the same species, then it'll work out. And there's a chance that if he tries to mate with a different species, that the parts won't fit, right? So that's also a possibility. That's so fun. See, I have Dragonflies of the East. I have not read the life cycle region. I've been using it primarily to identify dragonflies. So now I'm going to have to do a little bit of reading in the front of that book. That sounds fabulous, Susan. Thank you. All right, so those are dragonflies. We got to spend a lot of time on them. I love them very much. And I do want to stay in an aquatic environment. And so we next are going to discuss diving beetles. Diving beetles are great. Now, if any of you have watched my whiteboard video of diving beetles, I think it's called Mating Wars and Diving Beetles. You might have already heard this story, but I would like to share it anyway because I find it a fabulous one. See, these are two diving beetles right here. And if you know anything about diving beetles, you know that they don't have gills, so they can't breathe underwater, all right? But they're diving beetles, they live underwater, so they need an ability to breathe. And that, what a diving beetle does is it'll come up to the surface of the water, it separates its abdomen from its elytra just a little bit, and it pulls a bubble of oxygen, a bubble of air, and it holds a bubble of air in between the elytra and the abdomen. There's a little space in there. And sometimes when you're watching a diving beetle, that air bubble will like pop out the back of the elytra so you can actually see it a little bit, which is kind of fun. And then when they dive down into the water, their spiracles are kind of on the top edge of the abdomen, so they can use that oxygen, use that air bubble to breathe, but that air bubble does and will run out. All right. And if they run out of oxygen, if they run out of air, they do have to come back up to the surface and collect an air bubble and then dive again. You see, that is fairly successful until you consider that during mating, the males are on the top and the females are on the bottom. Now, the male, he wants to hold on for as long as possible, all right? His goal in this mating process is to pass on as much of his genetics as possible so that she lays lots of his eggs, right? He does not have the ability to ensure that her eggs are his, so his goal is just hold on longer than the last guy, all right? That's his primary goal. Now, her goal is, yes, to collect sperm and to collect sperm packets and all of these things, but she also needs to be able to breathe. So, if he's holding on for too long, she needs the ability to break away. And this leads to this kind of battle via evolution and adaptations, because he's trying to hold on and she's trying to come up with ways to break away. The females are actively evolving away from mating with the males. You know, like in birds, the males make themselves all pretty so that the females choose them. And there are those really cool fish that make all these really cool designs in the sand and things to like impress the ladies. But in diving beetles, they're evolving not to make themselves a better mate, but to figure out how to get away. And so this is where I like to start a story that I call Mating Wars and Diving Beetles. You see, back in the day, diving beetles, they're all very, very smooth, right? Their backs are very smooth. That makes them able to swim through the water quickly and evenly and with very little friction, nice and smooth. We love it. Now, also the exoskeleton has an outside layer of wax, and so that makes them even faster, right? Great time. And in that way, the females were able to get away for a long time. But the males got a little bit tricky, and the males, they evolved suction cups. All right, so on just the front leg, so the pro-tibia, pro is the front leg, and the tibia is the second segment of the front leg. They gained suction cups, and those suction cups have the ability to suction cup onto the female's back and hold on for as long as possible. And that is great. But not really great for the females. So, and this is a fairly advanced, keep in mind, this is a fairly advanced suction cup series. When they started evolving suction cups, the first ones were pretty basic, just like one or two really big suction cups on each leg. And so the females, what did they evolve? Grooves. All right, so now the females have these grooves along their backs to break the suction of the male's suction cups. And then over time, those suction cups started to adapt and change so that they aligned with the grooves on the females' backs. So if you collect two diving beetles, a male and a female, and you look at her grooves and his suction cups, you can kind of match them like a little puzzle if they're the same species, which is kind of great. Now, having grooves made it a little bit tricky for the really big suction cups to hold on. And that is where the males had to come up with a new evolution, a new adaptation. And I don't know how many of you out there have met a boy, but instead of coming up with a new solution, the male diving beetles said, more suction cups. So, we've got the big suction cups that were the original ones, but if you see those like smaller suction cups around the edges, and some of those smaller suction cups in other diving beetles are actually in the middle of the big suction cups, like little ones in the big ones, and that's kind of great. And all of those little itty bitty suction cups really hold on to the female's back. And I'm sorry, I got distracted by you guys. YouTube thinks you are being naughty by saying suction cups. That's great. Yeah, that is the reason for the big, the medium, and the small suction cups, right? Because the big ones didn't work because the grooves happened, and so then you created like those medium-sized suction cups so that they worked out. Now, admittedly, the females didn't come up with a new solution for getting away, but the males kept evolving and kept coming up with new adaptations. So the males kept coming up with another adaptation to even better hold on. And I did not bring a picture of this because I can't find a picture that I'm allowed to use of this. But If you look it up, I'm sure you can find one. Inside the medium suction cups and the smaller suction cups in there, in some of the most highly evolved diving beetles, scientists started realizing that the suction cups were starting to gain hairs. And you would think that fluffy suction cups wouldn't work, right? You would think that if it was super fluffy or super hairy that it would break the suction, and then that would be good for the females. So why are the males evolving little hairs? And so there were scientists out there, and they took this individual hair out of a suction cup, and they didn't put it under a compound microscope because it was too small. And they didn't put it under a slide microscope because it was too small for that. They took this itty bitty teeny tiny hair, put it into a scanning electron microscope. And you know what they discovered? They're suction cups. They're like 400 nanometers or something. Itty bitty, teeny tiny, hair-sized suction cups inside of the suction cups inside of the suction cups. So that the males can hold on to the females for as long as possible. And I love that Susan mentioned, this is totally right, that the male diving beetles are trying to mate for as long as possible, whereas the praying mantids that we talked about earlier, the males are trying to piece early, right? So it's interesting how insects are evolving and adapting that way. Let's see. I did not. I actually have I have photo credits at the end of this PowerPoint because the photos in this PowerPoint, that's a good point. Thank you for mentioning it. The photos in this PowerPoint are not photos that were taken by me, but they are photos that are under CC rights. And so I have the credits at the end of the PowerPoint. Okay. Suction cupception. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And now you all can do what I do, which is sit around in your house and wonder what you would do if you were a female diving beetle. See, for me, I feel like if I was a female diving beetle and I was fighting this, suction cups on suction cups on suction cups, I wouldn't go for more grooves. What I would probably do is come up with the ability to excrete some type of really slippery chemical, right? Maybe even from like behind the pronotum, like in between the pronotum and the elytra, there's that little bit of a soft region. I wonder if the female diving beetles could produce a chemical that would make them slippery, specifically during mating, so that the suction cups didn't work. I think that that's what I would do, because I think about a window, right? And right after you index a window, if it's still a little bit wet, that suction cup will kind of slide, and that's what I would do. Susan says she would secrete some mucus. Yeah. It's great. So those are diving beetles, and the way that they mate, and all of the fabulousness. At this small, physics goes weird. You're right, physics does go weird. Okay, fab. So those are diving beetles. I'm at this point moving away from aquatic environments, and we are going to discuss this butterfly right here. This is the red postman, but this mating process that we are going to be talking about is done by most of the long-wing butterflies. All right, so if you've ever been to a butterfly pavilion, the long-wing butterflies are the butterflies that are a little bit smaller, right? Probably the smallest of the butterflies that you'll see flying in a butterfly pavilion, because most of the butterflies that fly in the butterfly pavilions, right, we've got like the big owl butterflies or the big blue morphos that everyone pays attention to and loves, but there are these cute little long-winged butterflies that are long this way but then kind of stout this way. They look a little bit like this, and they are some of the most commonly seen, most numerous butterflies in a butterfly pavilion, and that is because they are very easy to get to mate. They are and in that way, it's very inexpensive to raise them. So they tend to be some of also like the less expensive butterflies. So we're talking about them. Now, there's a couple. I don't know, Susan, but I really appreciate that you're moderating everybody's comments for me. That's an important one on this one. All right, so I do want to give us a couple of like background information stuff before we move forward with these butterflies, and that is all of these the butterflies have a chrysalis. When that chrysalis emerges, we use the word eclose. Eclose is just when a butterfly comes out of its chrysalis, so they eclose. You can also use the word emerge if you want, but eclose is going to be one of those words you see in scientific literature, and so that's the word I'm going to use today. Now, when a male red postman ecloses from its chrysalis, right, or a female, when a butterfly ecloses from its chrysalis, it has to blow out its wings. And what I mean by that is it has to push blood through the veins of its wings and expand those wings nice and long. And then once the wings are fully expanded, they cut off circulation to their wings, and then they have to flap them and beat them dry. And it is not until the butterfly has fully expanded wings that are completely dry that they can and will have the ability to fly. All right, that is important for this story. Now, in the red postman or long-winged butterflies, the males will generally eclose 2 or 3 days before the females. So the males, they eclose from their chrysalis, and they spend all that time drying their wings and blowing them out. And yes, I'm ready to fly. And they go out looking, and they're going out and they're trying to smell some females, and they're trying to figure out what's happening out there. And they can't smell a single female. No mating pheromones at all. They're like, what is going on? And they'll fly around all day. Be like, I cannot smell a female out here. I was told there would be ladies. There are no ladies. And so he'll just fly around kind of aimlessly trying to smell for a female's, trying to smell for a female pheromone. They excrete the meconium after expanding their wings. I usually put a paper towel at the bottom. Yeah, so Susan, I do want to go ahead and I'm going to sidetrack here. They excrete the meconium. So she has this word on a comment and I love it. So meconium is a butterfly's first poop. All right. Meconium is also the word that we use for a human baby's first poop. Funny enough. And so when a butterfly is fully done expanding their wings, they've cut off circulation to their wings. They do have to expel extra waste from the caterpillar stage and from the and waste from the metamorphosis within the chrysalis. So they will release this red liquid that is a butterfly's first poop right after their chrysalis. Yeah. All right, so there we are. So the male is flying around. He's trying to smell for pheromones. He can't smell any. And then the next day, he's like, aha, I smell some female pheromones. And butterflies and moths, when they smell pheromones, the males, they generally don't just fly directly to the female like this. What they're generally going to do is they're going to fly in the general direction of her, but they're not ever really going to be able to go straight. They're just following, what they're doing is they are following the concentration of the pheromones. So if you think about her as being like the highest concentration, and then the wind is blowing in this direction, there's going to be like a there's going to be a cone of pheromones that comes out in that direction. So when he's way over here, he's going to go, I don't know where to go, but the concentration seems to be going this way. And then he'll find the edge, and then he'll turn around and he'll go this way. And essentially, he'll create this zigzag back and forth until he finds her. And by the time this male, he's like, I finally smell this lady, and I'm heading in that direction. And then he goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And he finally gets to where he's going, and it's a chrysalis. And he goes, wait a minute. I thought I was on my way to a female, but I seem to have found myself at, I don't know what this is. I can't figure out what's happening, but I seem to be at the right place because this is where the mating pheromones are coming from. See, the female long-winged butterflies, they start producing a mating pheromone before they've eclosed from their chrysalis. Like, before they eclose, they're like, hey guys, I'm ready, or I'm about to be ready. And then the males will come. And you know what? That male butterfly, he'll just sit on the chrysalis and wait for her. And if another male finds the same chrysalis, they'll kind of like fight in the air. They'll like fly around one another, and they'll kind of dive bomb one another, and they decide who is the best. I don't know how that works. Everybody survives, unlike dragonflies where no one survives. Everyone survives. One of the males flies away. The one that wins the little air flight battle gets to sit on the chrysalis and wait for the female to eclose. And the moment that she ecloses, before she blows out her wings and before her wings are dry, he mates with her. All right. If you take that, the male does not actually try to mate physically with the chrysalis. He actually does wait for her to at least start to eclose. And we call this pupal copulation. All right. If you go to a butterfly pavilion and you notice that there are long-winged butterflies sitting on chrysalids that have not eclosed yet, that is exactly what is happening. He's actually letting everybody know which female is going to be coming out next. So Susan says, oh dear, that might mess up her wings, and then she wouldn't be able to get a good place to lay eggs. And you make a good point there. And when we think about pupal copulation, admittedly, if you personify this story, it doesn't feel good, right? But we have to take this story into consideration with like insect populations and insect dynamics. You see, insects like... a lot of other butterflies and moths, the females will emerge or close, and then they'll go and they'll fly and they'll land somewhere, and they'll start producing pheromones, and they have to wait for the males to come and find them. In long-winged butterflies, the females don't have to wait for the males. In fact, it's the other way around. The males are waiting for the ladies. And so in this way, by the time her wings are blown out and by the time her wings are fully dry, she is already mated and she is ready to lay eggs. There's no waiting time. And so that seems to be very successful in this group of butterflies. Do they not use visual signals to find the girls? I would have thought that's one of the main purposes for such fancy wings. I'm not sure if they're going to be using some visual signals. I do know that there are some butterflies that will do kind of like mating dances in the air, and they'll kind of like fly back and forth and stuff. But you also have butterflies like monarch butterflies will go around, the males will go around and mate with anything that they can find that looks slightly like a monarch butterfly. The males will also attempt to mate with other males too, just like we were mentioning earlier with someone else. There was another insect we were talking about that does that. How long do the females live? Long-winged butterflies, I don't have a great answer for you, but I believe in Butterfly pavilions live approximately 2 weeks or 14-ish days. I bet you I could actually look up the proper number for you though. Because butterflies generally live longer. Butterflies normally live longer in the wild. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you for asking. As it turns out, the red postman butterfly, the one that we are learning about here, actually has an unusually long lifespan for butterflies, and have been at some point recorded to live up to 186 days. How many months is that? Like 6 months? That's a pretty long life for a butterfly. So I guess the butterfly we spoke of here is actually very long-lived, which makes it interesting because you would think that if you were going to undergo something like pupal copulation, that you wanted to mate as quickly as possible and go out and lay eggs, that you would have a shorter life cycle, like a shorter lifespan as an adult. But that is just not the case. I guess they mate in a position where he is not getting in the way of the expanding wings since they are just touching abdomen tips. Yeah, exactly. So he's going to take the upper position and he's going to connect that way, and she's going to hang with her wings low. Do your chains laying low? Yeah, so they do have a proboscis. They do have the ability to drink and take in energy so that they can live nice and long. And I had no idea that they lived for more than 6 months as adults. That's amazing. Cool. The females also not only feed on nectar, but they also feed on pollen, which is a protein source. And so some people say that because they're feeding on the pollen, which is a protein source, that's what gives them their incredibly long lifespan. What is the advantage of a long-winged butterfly living 2 weeks then? I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for that one, Deb. Sorry. They are from the tropics, right? So they could just have many generations over the course of the year since they don't have to overwinter. Yeah, exactly. These butterflies aren't worrying about overwintering. They're just kind of going through the cycle over and over and over again. The generations generally don't overlap, so the males eclosing 2 or 3 days before the females is going to be effective most generations. So even though they are always reproducing, the generations stay kind of controlled. That's the word I'm looking for. So do they mate repeatedly, or do they get enough sperm in the first mating to lay all the eggs for the whole 6 months like with bees? I don't have an answer for that because I didn't know they lived so long, so I had never even considered that. Let me see if I can look up an answer for you. They do it both ways. They mate as adults, and they do the pupal copulation. So yes, they are going to continue mating throughout that 6 months, and so they will mate with multiple males. Yeah, I'm sure that in the wild they get eaten well before that 6 months. You're right. Perhaps they are prey for birds or reptiles, and that's the advantage to their niche versus themselves. Yeah, that might make sense. So those are long-winged butterflies. It's a fabulous story to think about. I'm amused by them. And it's one of those stories that I can't tell in a school or a library, but I can teach you all, and insect intercourse is a fabulous conversation. Now, I really appreciate that you all have hung out here for... I really appreciate that you all have hung out here and are going to continue to hang out here. The next insect that we are talking about, I like to kind of pre-warn everybody that it's an insect that generally people go, or ew. But I do hope you stick around, because I can't talk about insect intercourse without discussing bed bugs. You see, bed bugs have a mating process that we call traumatic insemination. And it's traumatic because the male's adiagus, the male's reproductive organ, has something that we call a lanceolate paramere. And I don't know about you, but that sounds sharp, right? Lanceolate, sharp, pokey reproductive organ. You see, the male bed bugs, when they're going to mate with the females, they're going to take that lanceolate paramere, and they are not going to use her physical female reproductive organs. What he's going to do is he is going to stab through her exoskeleton and produce his genetics and produce his sperm packet inside of her body cavity. And then she has specialized organs that collect that and then move it to the correct place. All right. This mating process here, I do believe that the females at this point have created these almost like little divots in their exoskeleton that when the males are using that paramere and going to poke into her, they'll kind of slide into one of the divots and then pierce into that. And that is where her internal organ is waiting to collect it and move it to the proper place. But that is how bed bugs mate. And if you were to go and collect a female bed bug and you put that bed bug underneath a microscope, there's a very good chance that all over her body you're going to see these little white dots. And those are literally scars from the mating process, right? From being stabbed by this paramere. Now, if you go ahead and you take male bed bugs and you put them underneath a microscope, the male bed bugs are also going to have scars all over their bodies, because these bed bugs, they're going around and pretty much stabbing anything that they can find. That's what they're doing. So, that is bed bugs. Let me see if we've got, I wonder if there are many generations over here. Not sure. So dragonflies, near perfect aim. Bed bugs, good enough. Stab. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where it's at. The male is going to be slightly smaller than the females. Not by a huge amount, but it is a noticeable difference between males and females. And as a side note, the difference between a bed bug and a bat bug is the length of the hairs around the edge of the pronotum in comparison to the diameter of their compound eyes. So if you don't have a very close image of the head and the pronotum of a bed bug that you are looking at, it's possible that it is a bat bug from your attic. So go ahead and this is always just good information to know, because bed bugs and bat bugs look exactly the same, with the exception of that hair. So insect chitin can get scars. Does that mean the exoskeleton can heal and close up holes? Yeah, in the bed bugs, it can. In other insects, it can't. It's just a fun evolution of bed bugs. I mean, we something like a beetle can't be poked and then kind of reseal that, because generally we say that hemolymph doesn't scab, right? So their blood isn't going to scab to create a protected wound. To protect a wound. But in this case, I guess the lanceolate paramere is thin enough that the exoskeleton can rebuild around it. That's a good point. It's something I haven't looked into, but I do know that they scar. So yeah. Going to invent a superhero Miss Bedbug with super healing. Yeah, do that. That's great. All right. Just so that you can see them. Oh man, I'm gonna zoom in on these just so that you can. These are photo credits of pictures that I've used in the order I showed them here. So Swedish University of Agriculture for the bees. And then there we go, down the list. This is the dragonfly libellulid. All right. So those are photo credits for the pictures that you saw today. And let's see, that's good enough. All right. So those are a fabulous number of insects that and how they go through insect intercourse. Now, here's a fun thing. I have a whole bunch more insects that I can discuss and can talk about. I brought a pad so that I could draw a little bit and we could talk about even more insects. I was thinking personally that, so we recently did burying beetles, and burying beetles have a really interesting mating process, but because we did them recently, I'm going to say we don't need to really talk about burying beetles again. We can discuss cockroaches, or we could, this was way cool. Thank you. Aw, thank you, Susan. So I'm wondering if there are any insects out there that you are curious about, that we want to talk about a little bit more. Oh my goodness. We have to talk about fireflies for a minute. That's the insect I meant to add this one to the PowerPoint before we started. So I do want to discuss fireflies. They are fabulous. Specifically, I want to discuss two genera of fireflies. Those are Photinus and Photurus. All right. So as many of you already likely know, fireflies are going to communicate via light, right? So if we have, let's see. All right. So fireflies are out there communicating with light, not with sound or a lot of time, not even really with scent, mostly just light. And these fireflies are going to have, let's see, I'm going to fix that. Fireflies are going to have their own unique flash patterns, all right? Just depending on what species they are. So we might have like two long dashes and a dot, and then two long dashes and a dot. And so this firefly here, is going to be having his own kind of pattern and flight. Now, I know that this firefly right here is a male. Why is this funny? Oh, I know why. So this is a male firefly up here. Now, the way that we can tell male fireflies from female fireflies is that the males are going to be the ones flying, and the females, where they're going to be doing their flash pattern is going to be happening in one location, right? So the females are sedentary. They're going to be, the females are sedentary. They're going to sit in one place. They might sit on a tree and flash. They might sit on the ground and flash. They might be on a fence post flashing. But that's the way you tell males from females. And the male fireflies that are flashing are all of the male fireflies that haven't got some yet that night. They're out there just like flashing, like, please find me a lady, right? And the ladies are the ones that are just like sitting around waiting for a boy to come and find them. Now, when I was a kiddo, I would go out and I'd collect all of these fireflies and I'd put them into a jar and I'd give them like leaves and sticks and all types of fabulous things. And like, yes, I've got a little lamp here. Did you know fireflies are predatory? All right. Fireflies are more likely to eat each other than all of the leaves and things that I gave them so nicely. Now, they are predatory, are generally eating eating pretty small invertebrates because fireflies aren't very large and they also don't have any venom or anything like that. So they can't take down huge prey. But they are eating other individuals, things like eggs and small larvae and mites and columbella and I don't know, small things. Now, the reason I want to talk about Photinus and Photurus is because of their flash patterns and their difference in biology. You see, Photinus fireflies are poisonous. So they've got a toxin that they store in their body and they can't be eaten by birds or spiders or other predators, right? Photurus fireflies are jealous. No, Photurus fireflies are not poisonous. They're not toxic. They can be eaten by spiders. They can be eaten by birds. And it's a dangerous world out there for a Photurus female, all right? Or for a Photurus firefly in general. So the Photurus fireflies, they got tricky. So the Photurus fireflies, they got tricky. They do flash their own species flash pattern to attract a male down so that she can mate and lay lots of eggs. But Photurus fireflies will also flash the flash pattern of Photinus fireflies. Because then the male Photinus, he'll fly down to the female thinking that he's found a lady and he's gonna get some and he's gonna be able to pass his genetics on and he's all happy and he's coming down, and then she turns around and eats him. Because if a Photurus female, the non-poisonous one, eats a poisonous male, she actually has the ability to collect those toxins within her body and she herself becomes poisonous. And so in that way, it actually is going to help protect her from birds and spiders and all of the predators. She becomes poisonous. It's great. So those are fireflies. The most common firefly, I would say, at least in the eastern United States, is a firefly that we call the J-shaped firefly. And it's not because the firefly itself is J-shaped, but because the pattern that they make in the sky looks like a J. Because they will like flash once or twice like this, but then they are going to dive down towards the ground and they're going to light up their abdomen and then they're going to fly back up. And that is why we call them a J-shaped firefly. It's because they create these J's in the air. And that is a Photinus species. Photinus pyralis. So it is a toxic firefly, the most common one. All right. I'm wondering about the burying beetles and best beetles and others that do parental care. Do they have different mating strategies and produce fewer young? I know there are technical terms for the strategies of A, lots of babies, leave them to fend for themselves, or B, a few babies that get cared for by the parents. Those are R and K selected species, Susan. Yes, please pay attention to the patterns of fireflies. They are so cool. And fireflies will have their own unique patterns for species. And if you get really familiar with one species that's common in your environment, you can use its flash pattern to tell the temperature because fireflies are going to flash faster if it's warmer and colder if it's slower. Slower if it's colder. I had the thought, I see a lot of Photurus larvae, but I barely see any adults, and then I realized I'm probably getting tricked. That's funny. Yeah, that's very possible. All right, so I will go ahead and discuss burying beetles. Why not? They are great, and you did bring up a. Oh yeah, let's stay on fireflies for a minute. I just got a couple more questions. Do the larvae also light up? Yes. The larvae of Photinus and Photurus light up. In fact, fireflies have the ability to glow in every life stage. Firefly eggs glow if you touch them or poke them, if you like interact with them. That one is loud. If you interact with them in a way, the eggs will kind of glow if you shake them. Now, the larvae, sometimes in the United States, are called glowworms. And the end of the abdomen is going to light up. You've probably heard that term before. There are some fireflies that the adult females, they never leave that glowworm state. And they look like larvae their entire life. They have what we call larviform adults. And then the pupa, the end of the abdomen that kind of wiggles. If you've ever held a chrysalis or a cocoon, you'll know that like the end wiggles a little bit. The end has the ability to glow on a firefly too. So every life stage glows. Oh, Photinus and Photurus are genera. Yes. Are there additional genera and families? So, fabulous question. Let's go ahead and discuss a little bit of taxonomy. Fireflies are all in the family Lampyridae. Notice that a family name is always going to end in IDAE. So something like a Photinus or a Photurus can't be a family name. But Lampyridae is all of the fireflies out there. And there are a huge number of genera. I just pulled Photinus and Photurus genera because they are going to be kind of the two largest genus, but also because I wanted to tell the story about the females flashing two different flash patterns. All right, and so Susan says she barely knows her beetle taxonomy, and here is something, something that's changed, I don't know, in the last 2-ish years. The beetle family for burying beetles has changed. All right, let me see, I'm gonna give us some new paper here. Okay. So the family for burying beetles has changed. See, burying beetles used to be in the family Sylphidae. And that was both burying beetles and carrion beetles that were in this family. But recently there was an article by a taxonomist, and he reorganized, they reorganized, the families within beetles, a whole bunch of families, and realized that burying beetles and carrion beetles are inside Staphylinidae. Now, if you recognize that family, that is the family for rove beetles. So technically, burying beetles and carrion beetles are actually just a subfamily of rove beetles in this family Staphylinidae. So you remembered this Sylphidae, this was their family name. But because them as a family became a subfamily of another group, we just took this D and we turned the D into an N, and now we can say that burying beetles are in the subfamily Sylphinae. All right, that's how that works, because subfamilies always end in INAE and families always end in IDAE, and that's how we change that. Now, you were wondering about burying beetles in that they do parental care, and if they have different mating strategies, and if they produce fewer young, and the answer is it's complicated, but let's talk about it. So let's say if an animal dies. Let me get some brown right here. Okay, so I'm going to say this is, I'm not great at drawing mammals, and this screen is stretched a little bit. Let's see. Ugh, what's happening? Okay. I'm no good right now because I think that I messed things up. That's fine. There we go. All right. That's a dead mouse. He's sad. Okay. All right. So when this mouse dies, burying beetles, they are going to come and they have this really fabulous ability to smell death, right? So we'll have a number of adults coming by. You'll have a female, some females, and the females, they will all kind of cluster together. And then you get all of the males, and there's going to be a lot of them because burying beetles are really good at smelling death. All right, so I just drew 6 of them out here, 3 males and 3 females. Now, these individuals, if we had 6 adult burying beetles all trying to feed on the same mouse, there would not be enough food. So the plan, the strategy for burying beetles is the females will all come together and they essentially have these little battles, and they're going to come up with the number 1, the strongest female out there. And then the males will do the same thing. They have their own little battle situation where the males will say, all right, you're weak and you're weak, but this one right here, that is the strong male. And then what they do is the best male and the best female, they mate. And they are going to take this mouse as their food source. Now, because they are a burying beetle, they are going to dig under the mouse. Why? So they're going to dig under the mouse over and over and over again until the mouse is completely underground in something that we call a crypt. But not only are they going to bury the mouse, they are going to take lots of time and they are going to process the mouse or process the dead animal. In that way, what they're going to do is they're going to pluck all of the hair off of the mouse or all of the feathers off of a bird. And they're going to pluck all of those hairs and it's going to line the inside of this hole that, by the way, we call a crypt. All right, so this is an open crypt. There's a dead mouse inside of here, but now it's naked. It doesn't have any hair. But that is not where they stop for processing this animal. The adult beetles are going to chew up the meat. All right, they're going to chew it up. They're going to partially digest it. They're going to mix it with the enzymes in their mouth, and they're going to regurgitate it, and they create a meatball. All right, they create this meatball in the center of the crypt here. And because they have antimicrobial and antibacterial properties inside of their spit, this meat doesn't go bad. It also stops the meat from smelling too much. And that's going to help protect the meatball from individuals that like other animals that want to eat dead things. But if there's something like a fly that comes by or an ant that comes by and wants to eat a little bit of it, the adults will actually stay and protect the meatball. And they will actually fight off anything else that tries to, they're going to go and fight off anything that tries to eat it. Now, you did ask about do they have different mating strategies? So this is a unique mating strategy that I don't know of any other animals doing, where they kind of come together, but then instead of, you have 3 males and 3 females. You would think they just create a mating ball and go at it. But no, the males fight and the females fight and the winners mate and everybody else just scatters. And I feel like that it just doesn't feel right. Like, you guys, you're all there, mate, do the thing. But they're gonna mate, they're gonna go at it. That's great. You also asked if they produce fewer young, and the answer is no, but they have a solution for that. You see, the male is going to stay here and protect the meatball, and the female, she's going to go and she is going to lay eggs, not in the crypt, but around the crypt. And she's just going to lay a whole bunch of them. It doesn't matter how big the meatball is or how small the meatball is. She's just going to lay a whole bunch of eggs. And then she comes back to the meatball and she's going to hang out with the male and help protect it. Now, once those eggs hatch, the young are going to crawl into the crypt where they have ready food waiting for them. Yes! At this point, the adults are very familiar with how much food that they have, right? They've preemptively chewed up the meat. They've created a ball. They actually know somehow, these beetles know exactly how much food that they have and how many larvae they can keep alive, right? They know how many individuals are going to be able to make it. So they say, all right, you're the first one, you survive. You're the second one, you're the third one, yay, 4. Oh, 5, you're probably getting, this was a small mouse. We might not be able to support any more than 5, but we have so many more eggs. You see, if another individual, after they're like, well, we probably don't have any more food, tries to come in, what they will do, there's a word for it. It's called infanticide. The adults will actually kill their own young if there are too many young for the amount of food that they have. And they know that. Just instinctually, they know how many larvae there should be. And so any additional larvae that try to enter the crypt, the parents just kill them. Because these guys got here first, and these guys are the ones that we have food for. And we apologize, there is no more food for you. Yeah, don't put that one in the chat. You are right. But it is the scientific term for what these beetles do. Let's see. I wonder if bearing beetle meatballs are tastier or less tasty than vulture bee meat honey. I feel like if we were going to compare meat honey to meatballs, I'd want to eat meat honey because at least that has like sat for 2 weeks and fermented with sugar. I feel like meat honey is likely tastes better than this chewed up dead mouse. But you know, I don't know anyone who would even try it. Oh, the other fun thing is that the larva here, they do have chewing mouth parts. They have the ability to chew and swallow food. They can feed themselves all by themselves very well. All right. But sometimes they beg to be fed. So sometimes they'll kind of sit up and the adults will also like create this squeaking sound and the babies have a reaction to it where they come up and the parents will chew on the meatball that they've already chewed and regurgitated, but they'll chew it a second time and then regurgitate it into the babies' mouths. Even though the babies can chew their food and eat on their own, they will sometimes mouth feed the babies. And for me, what that tells me is that there's probably a really important symbiotic kind of, there's probably some gut microbes that are really important for the larvae that they receive. So a lot of young insects that are fed via regurgitant are not only just being fed the food, but they're being fed like essentially they're probiotic. It's like all of their gut microbes come from the gut fauna of the adults. Well, having just one male and female means they can use all the meat for their babies instead of sharing with someone else. Exactly! They don't need to share. And I do tell this story with the example of a mouse because it's a small animal that can only sustain one mating pair. But in an animal like a possum or a raccoon where you've got a really big dead thing, you can actually, they intrinsically know. So they'll pick, there'll be more than one couple that stays if the food item is larger. So if the food item is larger, it's more than just one male and one female. It's only one male and one female if it's a small food that only will survive one couple worth of babies. Oh, you were very tired. That makes sense. That's fine. Do they have preferences between mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians? I believe their preference is mammals and birds. I believe it's primarily mammals and birds, but I wouldn't be surprised if they fed on a reptile. I just don't know how they would prep that meat, like if they would take the scales off of a reptile or not. That would be interesting to look into. I know they preferentially go for mammals and birds though. All right, so the answer, so originally your two questions were, do they have different mating strategies and do they produce fewer young? Yes, they have a different mating strategy via the fighting. And no, they don't actually produce less young. They just kill the young that there are too many. Like they choose the number and then kill the rest. So it's an interesting selection process. And you also, somebody mentioned that they really wanted to go and see the synchronous fireflies in the Great Smoky Mountains. And yes, those are absolutely fabulous, the fireflies that blink all together. There is more than one colony of synchronous fireflies out there. There are also synchronous fireflies that live in southern Arizona, and that's where I got to see them the first time. All right. Yay! I am not so sure about, you mentioned best beetles and how they choose partners, and best beetles live in family units, so they have more than just one male and one female in the unit. And then I do believe that they feed each other's young, but I would have to do more reading about best beetles to really deep dive into that process. Also, best beetles are interesting because they make 13 unique noises. So they can squeak and knock their head and make this really deep rumbling noise. They can make sounds that are higher pitched than we can hear and lower pitched than we can hear. So best beetles are a fabulous insect, and they communicate via sound, lots of sounds. Very complex communication system. Okay, so that is all of the insects that I had planned for you. We are an hour and a half into this live, and I have been sincerely enjoying talking insect intercourse with you and all the weird things that insects do to make more insects. We are going to be moving back to our normal live streams next Thursday, where we're going to draw a fun buggy and look at some insects under the microscope. There are also synchronous fireflies at Congaree National Park, but at both national parks there's a lottery to reduce the number of people. Yeah, see the thing with synchronous fireflies is that if too many people approach them, that can be no good for the colony too. And because they're such a draw for people, that can be dangerous. All right. So make sure that if you are still hanging out here, and you are really enjoying it, go ahead and put the little thumbs up button so that everybody else out there in the world can watch and learn about insect intercourse. We are, oh no, I've lost it. Boop, boop. Give me 2 seconds. I've got to find me again. This one. There we are. Okay, found it. All right. So I am going to head off for the day. Oh no. YouTube is doing all of the weird things. Okay, very good. All right, I am going to head off for the day. I hope that you had a fabulous time. Look at, aw, you're welcome. I'm glad that everyone had so many questions and we had a good time discussing all of the bug stuff. We'll go back to our normally scheduled programs next week. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. All of y'all that are chit-chatting, I know you're subscribed. We talk all the time. But if there is anybody new out there and you want notification when I go live again, make sure that you subscribe. And subscribing also gives you the ability to chit-chat with me. All right, so you can use the chat box. My video has been fine the whole time. Yay! That's so good. I'm on a new laptop that seems to be going really nice and smooth, and the audio seems to be decent. So I really appreciate that. If anyone wants to share art that they've made, this is or if you want to. If you want to share art or just shoot me an email and say hi, this is my email address right here, trisha@theinsectopia.com. I also teach classes for students on a platform called OutSchool. And if you wanted, you could go to the description box below and follow that link, and it gets you $20 of free classes. Yeah, as long as it's your first class. Susan is requesting a tree hopper with a cool crest for next time. And of course, we can draw a tree hopper with a cool crest. I am even going to write it down on our crane fly from last week. I've got a number of different tree hoppers that are pretty cool, so that one will be a fun one to draw. All right, so next week we're drawing a tree hopper. I hope that you all have a fabulous rest of your week. I look forward to hearing from you next week, and stay buggy. Bye.